Good morning, fellow Ghanaians. And sometimes countries reach their moments when they need to just take a breath and then look honestly at themselves with all the defensiveness or political spin or the usual "it will be well" that we do here in Ghana bravado. But with all the humility that comes from knowing that something is fundamentally wrong and pretending otherwise will only hurt us more. Fellow Ghanaians, the WASSCE results released this week is just one of those moments. They are not just numbers or press statements or some graphs on that statement shared by WAEC. They are a painful testimony of how we've treated education in this country. How we have refused to listen to teachers, how we have prepared over the cracks, and how we have convinced ourselves that expanding access is the same as improving quality. And now the consequences are here, staring back at us with bluntness that leaves no room for excuses. Fellow Ghanaians, the statistics are bad, but what they represent is even worse. More than half of the students who sat for this year's WASSCE in Ghana are not eligible for admission into university to pursue degree programs. Let us sink in for a moment. This is not just failure. This is a collapse of the entirety of the SHS system. This is a country that speaks so proudly about STEM, innovation, robotics, AI, industrialization, but we cannot find space to breathe. When 27.5% of students fail social studies, a subject that for so many years became the safety net of struggling students. It is no consolation that last year only 9.56% failed the same subject. So something happened between last year and this year, something deeply structural and ignored for an extra 80,000 young people to fall through the cracks in a subject that is supposed to teach them how society works. And then the familiar pain, maths and science, and the very painful failings. These are not normal fluctuations. These are catastrophic shifts. These are numbers that if we were to be a serious country will force an emergency meeting at the very highest levels. Because you cannot keep talking about digital transformation when your young people cannot pass the subjects that hold the digital world together. I know many of us hear these numbers and immediately assume the worst of the students because that is reflex that we've developed as a society. Blame the children. But deep down, we know the truth. The children are not the problem. They are the victims of a system that demands excellence but provides no tools. A system that pushes them into overcrowded classrooms, gives them teachers outdated textbooks, leaves science labs without equipment, and then treat mathematics and science like rituals rather than subjects to be understood. Fellow Ghanaians, we've created a generation, or generations actually, of students who fear mathematics so deeply that some will tell you that they physically shake when exam season comes when it comes to these subjects. Not because they are dull, but because the way we teach the subject drains the confidence out of them long before they ever get a chance to discover their own ability. I was one student and still date, I cannot shake off my fear of anything mathematics. I sometimes think about the many otherwise brilliant young Ghanaians who've had their entire future cut short because of one failed math paper. How many dreams ended at the SHS level because the system convinced them that failing mathematics means you are less intelligent, less capable, and less deserving. The psychological wound takes years to heal. And if it heals at all, because I speak from experience, many of us grew up fearing mathematics, not because the subject is inherently impossible, but because our system has always taught it in a way that feels like punishment. So when I see these WASSCE results, I do not see lazy students. I see a country that has failed to nurture talent. I see a country that has not invested in teachers, a curriculum that is too theoretical, too overloaded, and too detached from real life. I see a classroom system where teachers are exhausted and under-resourced, where students memorize without understanding, and where learning feels like survival rather than discovery. We see schools where science is taught without equipment, where mathematics is a recitation instead of a conversation, where teachers are forced to complete the syllabus instead of cultivating comprehension. Fellow Ghanaians, we have to be honest with ourselves. What is happening to our children, our brothers and sisters? They are not failing. We are failing them. Because if 2020, 4 students were capable of passing, and they did, at a much better rate than we see this year. And clearly something is wrong today. And the scary aspect of all of this is that this is not merely an academic issue. It is an existential threat. A nation that cannot produce confident STEM thinkers cannot compete in a world that is currently being run on technology. A nation where nearly 1 in every student fails mathematics is a nation preparing itself for dependency. A nation that cannot get integrated science right is also a nation that will always import expertise instead of producing it locally. This is not a problem we can solve with political statements or promises of reforms that never come. We need a complete rethink of how we teach. We need to invest heavily in teacher training and retraining. We need science labs in every school, not just the elite ones. We need smaller class sizes. We need to modernize our teaching methods, not cling to chalkboard techniques from the 70s. Fellow Ghanaians, we need to accept that the world has moved. And if we want to produce globally relevant citizens, we cannot keep teaching them with tools that belong to our great-grandparents. Fellow Ghanaians, this year's WASSCE results should humble all of us, the government especially, parents, teachers, policy makers. This should force all of us to think deeply about the future of this country. Because a nation's future is not built in Parliament or the Flagstaff House or the ministries. It is built in every single classroom, every day, from Bunkulugu to Yoyo, in how children learn, in how they think, how they discover themselves, how they are encouraged or discouraged. And right now, the message our system is sending them is brutal, that success is a privilege that is reserved for a few, and that failure is their default. And our dreams must shrink because our system cannot support them. That is the message we send to these young ones. We cannot continue like that. We cannot watch the world move on and sprint while we sit on the sidelines debating very unnecessary matters and which school has the best choir or the nicest uniform, while the quality of our education continues to slump. The quality of our education must matter more than the number of schools we have built or the number of students we've enrolled. We need a national debate for some of these things, national vision for learning, something bold, unapologetic in how we think about education. Right now, we don't have that. Because fellow Ghanaians, the truth is very simple in all of this. If we do not fix our education, we cannot fix anything else. And if we do not rescue our children from this cycle of fear, failure and frustration, then we have no moral right to talk about national development. All of this flows from the same pipe. Good morning, fellow Ghanaians.